When Garland ISD was established in 1901, there were no schools for black students, despite the growing need. In fact, an official school for black children in Garland would not exist until 1922, when children began attending school in a small building located adjacent to the Katy Railroad tracks, just west of downtown Garland. Another building was later opened in West Garland on McKinley Street. As the number of black students rose, so did the need for more space, and soon elementary children were divided by age between the building on McKinley Street and nearby Sims Chapel Missionary Baptist Church. In 1936, Garland ISD moved its black students into a larger 3-room building located in an area known as the Flat, near the current-day Granville Arts Center.
As a matter of fact, we were on the square the day that the school come by, and that was the Ramsey brothers. They used to pick up houses and move them on wheels, you know. And of course, that was amazing to me, what this was coming through town. And they said that was the school. They were moving it down on 5th Street.
Known by unofficial names such as Garland Colored School, Garland Negro School, and Garland City School, the small elementary was led by Principal Wheeler Hardaway and had a staff of 2 teachers.
We had 2 big buildings, and each building had 2 classrooms, and it went up to the 8th grade.
And they were just like, kind of like large homes, houses. And then they moved in some kind of like barracks on the back.
There was 3 to 4 grades classes in each room.
And of course, the bathroom facilities were outside. And we had 1 drinking fountain, and it was outside.
During the winter, when that faucet was frozen, well, we just didn't have water.
And 5th Street, you wouldn't believe it now, but it was nothing but mud. On a rainy day, the teenage boys would have to get out and assist the bus driver with pushing the bus to get us down to the school. It was that muddy.
Well, our heat consisted of a big wood heater that it used to sit in the center of our classroom.
The students took turns of whoever they wanted to go out, and we had those big buckets. You go out and get coal and put in them and bring them back inside and put it in the coal stove,
They didn't have a cafeteria, so most of the children had to either bring their lunch or we would take orders that someone wanted, whatever they wanted, we would go to a store called Freeman's Grocery Store.
And if you had a nickel, they would take your order and you could go buy a 5-cent cupcake, either a 5-cent peanut patty.
You could take 15 cents and have you a big meal.
We would go outside for lunch. The only time we ate lunch really indoors was, bad weather.
There was a neighborhood, and there were tenant houses where a lot of our children lived there. They would go home for lunch.
I also used to have to walk up there to the elementary school and get our books.
Our books was books that was handed down from the white school.
Most of them were dirty, had been written in, pages missing.
And then when we turn them back in, then they want to say that, okay, y'all done tore the names and pages out of the books, but they was already torn out when we got them.
And sometime we would get a fairly new book, and that would be amazing.
When you don't know any better, that's what you have to go with,
We would play in the schoolyard, but we would play jump ropes or play tag or something like that.
We had basketball, softball, baseball.
Where we would take a sock and take that sock and fill it with material and roll it and tie it to make a softball out of.
We played mesquite. We played what they call upper white rock and rock wall. And those were some tough children. They was tough.
We didn't have a football field. Basketball court was just 2 goals, and it was dirt,
Sometimes you might wrestle, you go out and shoot marbles, which if the principal caught you shooting marbles, you got a whooping.
But we had good teachers then. Those teachers insisted you learned. You didn't get away with anything then.
At that time, you know, you listened to teachers. It's not like it is now.
When a fire razed the all-white Garland Elementary School in January of 1946, Garland ISD held a bond election to construct a new 20-room white elementary school, a 12-room junior high, and a 6-room Negro school. It was around this time that the Garland Colored School was named the George Washington Carver School.
When Mr. Pearson, who was the superintendent, come down and talked to him, Professor Anders made an announcement to us that the school was no longer the Garland Colored School. The new name of the school was George Washington Carver. And he went on to tell us who George Washington Carver was and why did they pick that name for the school.
Yes, it was called Carver before it moved to the East End. I think it was officially named Carver the same year that we were first bused to Booker T.
Garland ISD would not provide a high school for black students until 1954. So until that time, older students either dropped out or attended schools in nearby Dallas ISD. Garland ISD eventually bused older students to Booker T. Washington High School in Dallas ISD.
They bused us clean out of Garland when we was in the 9th grade because the school they built, Carver, it didn't go no higher in the 8th grade. So we had to go into Dallas. So I finished high school at Booker T. Washington.
It was really, you know, educational to go over there, I understand, because it was whole completely different from what it was out here at Carver, you know.
The one thing that they had more classes because it was a higher class school, because Garland was like a 1A, but Booker T was a 3A at that time.
The only disadvantage of that we had, we could not go to them after the school period because we was bused. We had to catch the bus back home.
You didn't have an opportunity to play sports when you went to Booker T because you had to catch the bus home. If you didn't, you would have to have your own transportation.
And when they had football games at Garland High, you couldn't even go to the football games. They wouldn't even sell you a ticket to go to the football game. And my dad would always go and peep through the fence to look at the game. And that was sad.
Well, nothing we do about it. Didn't know high school out there. And so we bused from them. We paid Garland High School, going to North Dallas to Booker T every day.
We was wondering why we couldn't go to Garland High. And a lot of them went to going to Booker T in Dallas, didn't want to go to Garland High, you know.
In the summer of 1948, Garland ISD was given a 7-acre tract of land in the middle of a brand new Negro subdivision on the southeast side of town.
And you know, blacks then, you talk about red line, First Street was a red line. There's nobody west of First Street that looked like me. And Derry Road was the other red line. Nobody lived east of Derry Road. And this community here was the newer section of Garland, the Rainbow Edition. So blacks did start to spread out. They left the old homes to the new homes over here.
The existing Carver School buildings were moved to the new location, along with 2 used Army barracks in an effort to create a new, larger Negro school. Old bricks from the fire-damaged white elementary school were used for the completion of the exterior of the building.
They moved those bricks down to Garland Colored School, and those were some of the bricks that they used to build Carver.
The new school for black students opened in late 1948 at the corner of Carver and Hopkins Streets. The name of Carver for the school would prove to be extremely appropriate, as the goal of both the man and the school were much the same: to improve the quality of life for the African American community.
Carver School was played a very pivotal role in the African American community.
I guess my fondest memories of being at Carver is just the closeness of the family there. There was a family there like no other. All the teachers were concerned about all the students there when we were at Carver.
If our parents wanted to know anything about what we were doing, they could ask the neighbor, or they could ask our teachers, the people at church. You know, everybody was really involved.
we just centered around our church and church and school. So if there was anything that we needed and we couldn't afford it, well, somehow or another through, at that time, I didn't know nothing about a PTA. We just had mothers that would help keep people in the school that needed it.
Because it was more of a family type school. It was more of a family. Everybody knew everybody. It was close knitted. All the kids in the school was close knitted.
Now, having taught school and have seen the lack of involvement from parents, as a time that we were carried around on a pillow and didn't know it. Because truly, you had the community, the church, and the school. Those three entities worked together to develop us to be the people that we are today.
I loved Carver. I loved the students at Carver. I was like everybody's sister, you know? The walls fed me, everybody took to me.
Oh, everybody.
They did my hair. They took care of me.
When you learn to take care of each other, you learn to help each other, you grow up that way in school, it passes all the way down. So if one made it, all made it.
Carver was separated from white schools physically and financially, but the school was always sound in an educational sense. The students of Carver were successful for many reasons, but their success was primarily due to the exceptional teachers that not only taught at the school, but often lived in the community.
Carver taught me a lot. Matter of fact, that's the reason why I went on to college from Carver. Miss Courtney was my inspiration of me going to school. Also, Mr. Lissa. I really don't have a favorite teacher because all of them was favorite to me.
We really had teachers who not only taught in the school, but they were a part of our community. They were a part of your lives. They lived next door. They lived down the street.
When society was saying no, no, no to us, our teachers were saying yes, 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 you can do anything. So I held that as a resounding, we can do anything despite what society dictated to us.
Everything that I have learned from first grade through set a basis of discipline and commitment, creativity, and a focus, a purpose, and a direction for what it was I needed to do.
The teacher was just like parents to us, fathers and mothers, and what we did at the school, we learned from our homestead because if we did something bad at the school, it got back to the house before we got back home. And
I enjoyed Carver School so much. The kids did so much for me. I learned so much from them. It was a learning experience to me. I'm sure as well it was to them. But it was an enjoyable experience.
It's not all of the things you have, it's what you bring to teaching. Those people that we had at Carver brought a love for teaching and love for children to their experience.
I believe they laid the foundation for the phrase, "No child left behind," because they pushed us and they drilled us to be the best that we could be.
I'm a firm believer that if you try and you trust in the Lord and you believe that you can achieve, you can do whatever you set out to do.
what I remember is the quality of the students, the professionalism even of the students when they were given assignments, when they debated. I see a teacher at a university and I see students in the university that couldn't compare with the students of Carver.
In June of 1954, on the heels of the landmark Supreme Court case, Brown v. Board of Education, Garland ISD announced plans to set up a full high school for Negro students by the start of the new school year. In 1955, the first 4 graduates of George Washington Carver High School received their diplomas. By the following fall, Carver would be home to 388 students, including 69 at the high school level.
We were the first group went to, when we finished in 53, I think like that, being having a high school, they shipped us, bused us to Booker T. And we stayed up from, in 1955, they got the high school back out here, and it will move back out here to finish from 56.
Due to overcrowding, Garland ISD school board members voted to add 6 new classrooms to Carver that would connect to the current structure at a cost of $25,000. The school would be separated into 2 buildings, one for elementary and junior high and another for high school.
Well, as our community would grow, then we would add more rooms to the school. And I would go to Dallas and I would see these other schools had just one big building. That's why I envisioned Carver to be one day.
The fall of 1955 not only saw a new look to Carver, but also the addition of the Tiger football team.
I played defensive end in Booker T over. Then after I come back out there, I already, I did quarterback, tackle end, I still on the field, offense and defense. Because when I came out here, none of those guys had never played football before.
I started playing football in the 9th grade, and we won about 4 district championship games, but we never did get to go to state, and I hate that. As in, we had a falling out with Mineola about who crossed to 20 more times than the other, and they couldn't make a decision on who was telling the truth, so they just disqualified both of us and went on with the game.
And if there was any kind of a event during our homecoming, instead of being with the team, you had to go and march in with the queen with your football uniform on. So, because we didn't have very many people.
Win, we're gonna fight. Lose, we're gonna fight, and that's just the way it was,
All those guys I wanted to emulate because they were hard-working athletes that used athletics as a stepping stone to greater things.
And now this is kind of results of, this is what we played for. Other than to impress the girls, this is what we played for. And this is what we call that blue and white pride.
Football was big at Carver, but other athletic programs thrived as well.
100-yard dash, I did 9.6. 220, I did 21.7. And I went to the state in 56, and I did a 9.8 down there. And I got first and second place, and first place in 100 and 220, and we got second place in the 440 relay.
We didn't have batons, and we had to use broomsticks, and we didn't have, our uniforms were torn, and we had to use tape to tape them, together.
Even though I really couldn't run track as much, but because my friends were doing it, I felt like I needed to be out there, so I'd get up in the morning and I'd be trying to get myself in shape.
If the girls had big feet and the boys had large feet, then sometimes we'd have to shuffle our shoes. Although we were wearing Chuck Converse Taylor shoes, we still didn't have enough shoes, so I thought that was kind of neat.
1957 would bring diplomas to 13 students. It would also be the first time that GISD Superintendent Glenn B. Couch would speak publicly about desegregation. At the time, only 6 districts in Dallas County had Negro high schools, and none of the county's 20 districts were integrated. By 1962, the concept of integration was becoming reality across the United States. School districts across the country were slowly integrating Black and white students, and Garland area residents were taking notice. A Dallas Morning News letter to the editor noted, Garland High School is graduating 443 white students and only 7 colored students from Carver. To anyone interested in efficiency, it is obvious that the 2 schools should be integrated. Garland ISD officials reluctantly agreed, and in 1963, a stair-step, grade-by-grade integration plan passed by a narrow vote of 4-3. Starting in the fall of 1963, parents of Black students could apply for a transfer for their children to attend a white school.
They took me to Carver, and they asked me which school that I wanted to go to. Well, it was a Black school, and I didn't want to go because I wanted to learn more. And I went to the white school because, hey, I could get a better education.
At that time, during integration, we looked at it as you would have a better opportunity in more classes and everything. I know elementary school is you just getting started, but you would have a better opportunity at that time. So that's what we're looking at. When you still looked at Carver, it was still like, separate but equal, but it wasn't equal.
I was alone. I mean, being in all white school, it was exciting. They treated me with the best respect. I was the head of the class, so always first for everything. I was always first, and it was wonderful.
Well, it was a little different from them, a little different, because they had gone from an all-black school to an integrated school, and at that time they would come home sometime discouraged.
The first year it was just me. Second year it was me and my brother Charles. Third year me and my brother Bruce. Then the fourth year they integrated with more blacks.
In July of 1965, in compliance with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Garland ISD announced plans for full integration by way of a freedom of choice plan, allowing students across the district to attend the school of their choosing. George Washington Carver was to remain a 12th grade school. In the beginning, only 76 out of the 650 black students chose to transfer out of Carver, but by the end of the first school year, the number had climbed to 158. In a measure to integrate further and cut operational costs at Carver, the GISD school board elected to abolish the high school at Carver. 12 years after its inception, George Washington Carver High School was becoming a memory.
You got to look at the history of education. It goes back to the Brown versus Board decision in 1954. Think of that, 1954, and it got to Garland, Texas in 1967.
I wanted them to go to South Garland and Hillside, but I didn't want them to go to Garland High. And I did that because they had bused us clean out of Garland to go to a school in Dallas.
There were some teachers that accepted all students, and there were some teachers who put African Americans in the back half of the classroom and the Anglo or white students in the front half of the classroom. And I had a couple of those. Majority of them did the integration of the classroom.
We talk to our kids, explain things to them. And some kids, they did have some problems.
If I felt like they were not being treated right, I always spoke my mind and let them know. But I was at the school so regular till after I started working, I was at the school so regular, so they was mostly pretty nice to them when they started integration.
And it needed to happen because a separate but equal clause was not effective, We just give them the same thing we have over here, just you don't come over here. That didn't work out.
George Washington Carver continued as an elementary school until November of 1970. During the 5-year span that Carver remained open after district integration, no white students ever chose Carver as their school of choice. 20% of the district's black students still attended Carver, primarily because it was still the neighborhood school for the large number of black families in East Garland.
As far as the neighborhood, we didn't have to go far because we had a store, Sammy's or Snappy's, that was in the neighborhood. The integration thing, there was a lot of good things with integration, but we lost a whole bunch of the stuff as far as neighborhoods were concerned.
Facing pressure from the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, GISD officials chose to build a new elementary school on the east side of town called Hillside Elementary. Upon the completion of Hillside in November of 1970, the 150 remaining black students at Carver were transferred to new schools, and George Washington Carver School officially closed its doors.
It was a hurtful time when they decided to close the school, but we knew that it was for the best.
When we knew that integration was going to happen, it was not a choice anymore, our teachers prepared us. I can still vividly recall Miss Tony saying, you're gonna learn this, you're gonna know this, because when you go to that white school, you're gonna know these things that you're supposed to know.
It's just so much that we can talk about from back in the day, which we call it, that we don't have now. And we lost a lot of that even when they started the integration. However, we knew that, there needed to be change about a lot of things.
The George Washington Carver School buildings remained part of Garland ISD until the early 1980s, when the city of Garland purchased the property and demolished the original building. However, the high school buildings are still used for various city programs and offices. The Carver Senior Center is housed in the oldest part of the high school buildings. The gymnasium still stands as well and was renovated into a large two-story structure known as the Carver Multipurpose Cultural Center. The memory of the George Washington Carver School lives on through the voices of its alumni and former teachers. Through the Carver Alumni Association, CAPS, the legacy of Carver remains a strong force even today. To say that Carver made an impact on his community is nowhere near enough to the whole truth. In many ways, Carver was the community and the community was Carver. George Washington Carver said that 99% of the failures come from people who have the habit of making excuses. The students and faculty of the Carver School didn't make excuses for what they had. Instead, their experiences at Carver created a foundation for success that they could build on for their future.
I completed my first semester of college as a straight A student. And I don't say that to flatter myself, but I say that because of the teachers at Carver.
Whatever was thrown at Carver, whatever physical and fiscal situation the students or the faculty at Carver were in, you could see the diamond shining. It made no difference if you had a machine or if you had a shovel or a pitch or what have you. The diamond showed forth.
They really carried the name on with their school, George Washington Carver, who did so much with the peanuts. So these people have done so much with what they had to work with because I know what they had.
My mom and dad always told us, my brother and I, that we are all God's children. And nothing can keep you from doing anything. Just remember, you are God's children and there is no fear of any man because God loves everyone.
Right don't always win, truth don't always conquer lies, and everything in life is not fair. But it's part of our education to adjust to those situations. So that's what we did.